Come on now. We're thinking spring. And if you planted beets, if you planted Swiss chard, if you have got spinach and cabbage and things going, I'm betting you're going to have a pretty good garden dinner tonight, because we are really seeing a whole lot of folks out there doing the early part of getting that garden going. Now, I had a note today from someone that made me realize that I don't actually have the phone numbers at hand, so I'm going to solve that problem. But if you'd like to text, you probably already know it, so go ahead and jump in. You can always go to supertalk.fm and get all those numbers, as well as the radio channels, radio station numbers, and all those sorts of things. And that puts you here with us. And quite frankly, where else would you want to be on a Saturday morning? Get a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea, and let's talk plants. I got to tell you, I have, I don't know even what to think about this. There's going to be a bunch of good photos coming up today on supertalk.tv, some of which are from my garden and some of which are a collection of plants that I have grabbed for you that are the plants I call, they sounded like a good idea at the time. And there's one of them now, Chinese wisteria. We do have a beautiful. But you have to have a full-time attitude about this plant.
You do. Yeah. It's a
That's
job.
why, if you're anywhere near Greenwood Cemetery in Jackson, Mississippi this week, this is the day to go look at their beautiful, magnificent, spectacular. Thank you, Cecile Bordeleau, for working those things so hard and keeping them going. It's a beautiful, beautiful arch, and yes, you can actually drive under it. You can't drive under it, but if you were allowed to drive there, you would drive under it. Anyway, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. The one that we're showing you at the moment is somebody's house that is about to be eaten by wisteria, but a very neat one.
Man, I've got a really nice, exactly the same purple, and Buddy, they are looking like hanging grapes right now.
Yep.
The aroma is not as pungent and strong as normal, and I wanted to ask you about that. Is that winter, or is that we're just not there yet?
Temperature usually controls that with them. If we were having more humidity, or we were having temperatures in the 70s, which you're not quite yet, sometimes it is that way when they're blooming, and that makes them very, what we call redolent is the term for that.
Redolent?
Yeah, it's the smell that will follow you down the road.
It does. I love it. Like give away.
Sometimes good, sometimes not.
Give it away to people,
good.
you know.
Yeah, in this case, it's a good one. But it is true. It's a beautiful plant, and you can see why people wanted to bring it into their gardens. It's beautiful.
Now, is there a way, I mean, I guess my question is, it kind of goes downhill.
Yes.
It does its thing, and I appreciate that. I had a shoot that came off years ago and went under the deck and under another deck, and then kind of sprouted up in a pot. It came up through the hole in the bottom.
Yeah, they'll do that.
It made a tree, and so I've had to kind of cut it back over the years, and during the winter I cut it back, and it's starting to sprout again. The big one that's around the gazebo and pergola, it's always constant. And, Buddy, when those beans start popping out of those shells, it is like a lightning round of batting practice. I mean, you better be ready.
And I have said this before, but it is absolutely true. If the wisteria gets under your top soil layer, the top layer of your soil, it may not be topsoil, but you're under your soil, it becomes like the fiber optic network.
Yeah. That's what happened.
For the next 20 years, you will be, no matter where you dig, there will be a wisteria root.
And so that was my question, is if you want it to kind of go where you want it to go, is there any way to really deal with that, or do you just kind of ride with the wind?
You have to keep after it.
Yeah, if you're trying to
the fact that it came up in a container 2 decks away does not surprise me.
That was the weirdest thing. I kept thinking to myself, I don't know what this is, what I grew in this pot, and then eventually it came into a very mature wisteria, and I trained it, and it just got too big for the area.
Well, and if people like the way it looks, but they want a more controllable plant, there's American wisteria, which is a lovely, beautiful plant, and it's not quite as gregarious as this one. And there's also white wisteria. Both of those are easier to grow and not as, well, they're just not as big of bullies. But there is something about the wisteria that is Chinese, it's purple, it's in bloom now, and it is spectacular. And yes, it will. Oh goodness, it's a beautiful plant that will eat you alive. It
is a lot of fun. Hawk loves it because it he loves a bird, and we have birds that like to get up into the top of it. And,
Sure.
But man, he is absolutely fascinated with it. But once the beans started popping out of the shells a couple weeks ago, it was kind of confusing because he didn't quite know what
didn't know
was
what
going.
to do
he didn't know
about
if this was a
that. Yeah.
bird doing this or if this
How
was
did this
Mother
work?
Nature.
How did this
Man,
happen?
but those things—that's one of the coolest things. I've never seen a plant that throws a fit over the change in temperature like a wisteria does.
It does.
Man,
It does.
It gets mad at you.
We have a good question from the 662. Is it way too late to plant tulip bulbs? Well, yeah, but if you have them, I would plant them rather than leave them in the refrigerator for a year. So, sure, it is late. They're in bloom now, most places, or have already bloomed.
Mine are up about almost a foot right now. The irises look
Tis
good
the
too.
time.
I don't know what's different about the iris this year. Maybe I did something a little bit more, cleaned out the area better or something. But man, the corner bed that had a couple of tufts, 3 or 4. It's now like 12 or 15, and man,
Yep,
they're about
yep.
waist high now. I was like, this is what I want.
I do think you talked about them last year, and I think you probably cleaned them out a little bit and gave them a little bit more space to spread.
Mm-hmm.
And if I recall, these are bearded iris. They have the falls, the petals that fall down.
They do. Looks like
Okay.
a crayon when it's opening, and then it
Yeah.
falls over. Yeah.
Yeah, and
The
that's why
bloom.
that's why they needed that clearing. They need to have a little bit of their rhizome above ground. And I think you did that. I seem to recall that.
Perfect. Well, they looked amazing, and then
Yeah,
the
and that's
roses.
what helps them multiply.
And then the roses, I don't know how far people along are with theirs in the northern or southern, but here in the central, man, little buds are looking aggressive. They're looking good. I'm impressed with the number of the yield so far. All I did really was deadhead them real well and prune them back. And
And that's really all they needed. As long as your roses are in good shape, they don't need to be butchered as we talk about heavy pruning, but we do need to keep them shaped up. And particularly if you prune a little bit more than average in February, you don't usually have to do much later except a little bit of pruning and to keep them in shape and do that deadheading, take that pretty seriously so they can keep flowering.
don't you love gardeners, though? Because I was sitting out shooting a basketball with a friend a couple of days ago, and one of my friends comes by, and she's a gardener and absolutely does an amazing job. She's of Chinese origin and just really has a great green thumb, takes a lot of pride in it, and listens to the show. But she came by and we were talking. I said, "Hey, come shoot baskets with us." She goes, No. She was on her walk. She goes, "Hey, I have something for you." So she went back to the house a couple of houses down and brought this huge shoebox back with all of these seeds, and just seeds of all kinds. And she goes, "I'm giving these to you. I don't have any more room for them.
You've got to do this. Yes,
you have to
take
plant
this.
these for us." So I'm like, yes. So but that's one of the great things. I
love that.
I love the spirit of gardening and the sharing.
Gardeners are very generous,
Aren't they?
And yes, as we speak, I am in the process of processing some seeds to send out to folks. So if you want some surprise seeds from Garden Mama in the next few weeks, send an email with your physical address to mamaonair@yahoo.com.
So if I take a picture of this box that has quite a few different things in it, would you be able to help me figure out where the depths?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And with a little bribery, like a lunch at Little
you
Tokyo
don't-
next time, maybe.
Probably with a little bribery, it could be done. You don't see my posts. You're not in my online world so much. But I was literally posting about that very topic. It's like, here go the seeds. What do you got? And mine, you will see the joke today is, I have to plant weird stuff. It's just that's the way I am.
I've never seen these types of seeds before.
And that's why I sent that today, because I hadn't either, and that's why I went ahead and got them.
Knowing her, there'll be beautiful flowers, and
We'll
definitely wanna
find
grow
out
them.
shortly. We'll find out
Yeah.
shortly. We don't know, but we'll find out. I see Mark has sent us some lovely pictures this morning. Thank you for that, Peaches. Appreciate you. He's working in the real world today. The rest of us are doing this. I'm here to celebrate something, and I'm going to celebrate it several times this morning, so I may as well go ahead. As soon as you start talking about Bradford pears, my friends, people weigh in. People will tell you that so-and-so loved them and planted 12 of them, and they're gorgeous, and we love every one of them. That's rare. The next person will say, the second one from the left fell over twice and we stopped replanting it. Or another person will say, this is a tough one to go with, but I really love it. And then someone else calls and is hysterical and says, my Bradford pear just split in half, and now it's laying across the driveway, and what am I going to do? Okay? We know the problems with Bradford pears. We also know that there has not been a great deal we can't do anything about their tendency to smell so strong. Whereas the wisteria may have been a little bit mild this year, the Bradford pears have been pollinating everybody. And that's not a bad thing for them, but it's bad for us. So we've talked so many times about this. I just wanted to let you know that I don't really know that much about these particular folks, but the South Carolina Forestry Commission and Clemson University, two interesting sources, are not only encouraging homeowners in South Carolina to cut the Bradford pears down, they've got a tree replacement. Now, you have to get rid of your own tree. They're not going to come take care of that. I'm saying the nursery industry over there probably needs to step up and help with that, or the tree services or something, to get rid of these things. But if you cut them down, you can claim a bounty, and they'll give you a couple of trees in a couple of different places over there. I love this. The Bradford Pear Bounty 2026.
Sounds like the Nutria program, but just with trees.
It's an invasive tree program. And there's of course, there's always the disclaimer: supplies are limited and registration is required. Of course it is. They have to count these things. But anyway, point being that you can, in fact, in South Carolina, get into that. One of the giveaways is today, and one is next week. So I don't know anybody that. Well, I shouldn't say that. I know two people that like Bradford pears enough to go plant one today. That's all. And I know a lot of people. So trust me, contributing to the worst invasive plant, the calorie pear, by giving their parents back into the native environment is really not good. So congratulations to South Carolina. Oh, we got Greg weighing in. Yeah, I thought about you when I saw the weather forecast. He's in Vaughan, y'all know, Kathy and Greg. Monday night temperatures are not looking too great for central Mississippi blueberries, and we just have to cross our fingers. That's all we can do. Make sure that they're not dry, that the plants are not dry going into it, and that's really about all that we can do at this point. But they sure are beautiful. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, this is fun. Telling us good morning, another texter from the 601. I bought some lemon cucumber seeds because I've never grown them. They're round-looking lemon fruit. And is there anything special, or just trellis and let it ride? I think it's just absolutely the same. I will tell you that they're a little bit pickier in terms of that they don't want to be overwatered. You know, sometimes a cucumber is in a garden will get as much water as a pumpkin, and these really don't need quite that much water. But once you get them up and growing, they will take over, and it's a delicious fruit. And I like lemon cucumbers. I like a bunch of different cucumbers. So yeah, no, I love that. Trellis and let it ride. We need to make that one. We need that on a T-shirt. Just trellis and let it ride.
I
like that.
Mike called, and he was still a little under the weather, but his project is going well with the potatoes. He had a couple of questions for you, though. Mm-hmm. First of all, he planted multiple colors, but he kept them in each different, pallet container. Kind of separated. His question was, could he mix the colors like the Minnesota white and the Minnesota blue, the Yukon golds? Can they be planted in the same setting, in the same footprint there?
I don't know. I think so.
And then
I don't think they're going to cross with each other.
I guess that would have been his worry.
Because they're already propagating themselves. Mm-hmm. So I'll have to think about that.
Well, and second, he was just curious of a fertilizer that would be good for those potatoes.
Basically, anything that says vegetable food on it. Okay. You don't want to give them just nitrogen. Just a cottonseed meal. That's too much nitrogen by itself. You need something that has the other elements in it. But it doesn't matter. And in that setting, you almost could use one you mix up in the water. To get it in there. Or each time you put in some more material as the stem grows, you could certainly put some fertilizer in that material. So I think that would work. I have done that. I have a couple of pineapple tops. Well, that's congratulations.
Yeah.
They have done well, but the winter, the ends have died. Can I trim them? Absolutely. Just trim them like they were the ends of a ribbon. In other words, don't cut down too far into the leaf. Just trim off that part that has crisped up. They'll be fine. I really do enjoy growing pineapples. It takes a long time. You have to kind of ignore them, and they get real big and kind of messy. But they're beautiful plants. Beautiful, beautiful plants. I bought 2 brown turkey figs, planted and mulched them. Let's see. The last freeze killed them to the ground. I'm seeing some sprouts at the base. Are they grafted or are they the real thing? If it's brown turkey, I doubt seriously that it's grafted. So I think you're just getting some regrowth. I think you're in good shape.
And when you mean grafted, I want to be clear on what that is. That like would a plant that had died find a new way off of like a root, or
when something is grafted, it's generally because we want to grow it, but the bottom of the plant, the roots of that particular plant, like a lemon or a kumquat or something like that, really don't do as well in our soils. They would prefer the sandy soil of southern Florida. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in order to grow them in other environments, we graft the top of that plant to a rootstock that is compatible with it, but will grow in this mess of soil that we have in this part of the South.
Creative. Wow.
Yeah, that's why you sometimes sometimes you see stuff from grafting. Grafting's very cool.
But it makes it more hardy for where we are, using a different style.
But it's also why, for example, when people say that their lemon tree died, and when it came back up, it had a bunch of thorns on it. That's the graft coming up. That's not the lemon tree.
Gotcha. Well, we had an interesting
citrus trifolia.
Yeah, we had an interesting pick. What was it? Probably about a year ago, where somebody had, I guess it was a Bradford pear, and they had grafted something, or it was a crepe that they'd grafted a Bradford pear to. I don't remember what it was. Whoever the listener is, send that again.
Send that to us. But
really cool.
But you will see sometimes, for example, you'll see pink and white dogwood flowers on the same tree because they've been grafted. Because they don't grow on the same tree, but that you can graft them to do that. There's a person, and I wish that I could recall more about it. I don't really, but he collected apple varieties, and apparently there are trees that have 5 or 6 different kinds of apples on each one that he has grafted because he's preserving, old species.
You want a Granny Smith today, or do you want a McIntosh?
See, or one you never heard of. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about plants you never heard of. We'll be right back. Well, hey, one of the things about conversational radio is that it goes back and forth. It has points to make, and it also has observations. Sometimes there are facts involved, oftentimes in this particular case, because we're talking about gardening. And Paula from Dentville, well, I was checking out her pictures. I had seen them before, but they're so spectacular from our buddies over at Rivers that she was out last week. And, of course, she bought yet another turtle planter. I think if you're inventing turtle planters, you need to know about Paula because this is great. She has a great collection. Anyway, she's headed to work, and we appreciate her tuning in today. We got a text from our friends at the Harvest Barn talking about their lemon coming up and having those thorns in it, so it's basically no good. And I said, well, wildlife will usually eat that fruit, and sometimes people like them. I don't. I think they're too bitter. But it is one of those things that if it's taking up space that you can afford to be given away, the wildlife may like it. But if, on the other hand, it's in your way of getting your fruit garden going, get rid of it. Or graft something else to it and see what happens. I like that. I like that. Nathan's in Smith County. What a great idea. One of the most rewarding parts of doing what I do is getting to travel the state and neighbors and just look at all the beauty God has created. Right now I want to stop and take a picture of every wisteria. I like that. That's a goal. I think that's a really good goal. I appreciate it. I appreciate that very, very much. And the folks at Harvest Barn Church are going to try grafting something. I love that. It's a really good idea. It is not a lost art, but what you're doing, I can't really illustrate it without having wood in front of me, but what you're doing is taking compatible tissues and fusing them together so that they can grow together where they ordinarily would not. A friend of mine years and years ago who had cut off the tips of his fingers in a saw accident. Don't flinch, he's perfectly fine. But he said that was basically how they reattached his fingers, was to graft them. So it is that same sort of thing. You're trying to put things together that are apart, that have the potential, though, to grow together and do something really important for you. So that's great. Love it, love it, love it. Oh, irrational numbers like pi. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but I was always glad to find out that there are numbers that are irrational. They are things that cannot be expressed as a simple fraction, like pi, the square root of 2. You can't get there. So they represent specific things like that radius, but they also cannot be written in the same way as other ratios. So that's why they're irrational. I don't know when we decided to start categorizing these things. I should know this, but I don't. But I'm fascinated at how many of them we have kept. The decimal forms of irrational numbers like pi, they never terminate, and they never repeat their pattern. So if you think about it, if you're talking about irrational, that's pretty irrational. The square root of any non-perfect square is also irrational, okay? And our things like transcendental numbers, I'm not even going to go there, but and a lot of things about irrational numbers are important, and at the same time, the one that everybody knows is pi, and that's because we're so accustomed to it. We have so much to do with it. Pi is, of course, it's the constant ratio of any circle's circumference, that's the loop of it, to its diameter, that's the distance across it. And it comes out to the distance around a circle is about 3.14 times the distance across it. That's how we came up with pi. That is what pi is. It's also a really good reason to bake a pie. So you can weigh in on what your favorite pie is today. We will take those accolades. I don't know how I understand. Hey Lance, I'm hearing chocolate chess from you, but
I like all pies pretty much. Chocolate chess may be my favorite though.
I honestly can't remember when I ate chocolate chess, but I think I'm gonna have to try it. So that's a good one. Part of my family was famous with chess pie. That's what they made all the time. Another part of my family was famous with cream pies, coconut cream and that kind of stuff. I tend to be more of the old traditional, lattice crust apple or something like that. I don't know. It's funny. Everybody's got a pie though, and if you have not ever, if you've not ever tried to bake a pie, you should, because then at very least you will respect the people who do this so well, because it's not us. We throw pies together, but they're not the greatest.
I eat them.
Yes,
I've never made
that.
A pie. Yeah, I mean,
we appreciate that
definitely
part.
not my strength.
Well, we're going to have to just put you into. We'll have to get you into a baking mode one of these days. It is. It's my experience with baking pies is not as bad as my experience with trying to make yeast bread, which is a complete useless. You're absolutely useless. Oh, pie movie scenes. Here we go. We can get into that too, folks. Trust me. Today is also a couple of other interesting bits and pieces of day, of what day this is and all those kind of things. I still don't know how people put these things together. Today is, among other things, Genius Day, and it's also Ask a Question Day. So do I have to ask a genius question, or do I have to ask a genius a question? Something to think about. It's also Learn About Butterflies Day, so I think everyone can have that goal, to learn about one more that you didn't happen to know about. In my world today, it's the hackberry butterfly, and I'm so hackberry moth. I'm really sorry that hackberry trees are so, well, people don't think a whole lot of hackberry trees, but they do a really good job for their critters. How about that? How about that? Did you know? I don't think I told y'all this, and I should have. A lot of people are very involved in forensics. They want to know, for example, the crime drama or the disappearance of an object. They want all of the data and all of the information that they can possibly get, and they want to put it all together in a very specific forensic pattern to find out what happened. Well, sometimes it extends to plants. And from the Field Museum in Chicago, Matt von Conradt, he is indeed a lead author of the study and the head of the botany collection there at the Field Museum. He likes detective shows. So fascinating that this happened. But in 2009, he picked up the telephone and somebody said, "Hello, this is the FBI. Could you help us identify some plants?" And since he's the head of botany collection at the Field Museum, he was a logical person for them to contact. He said, "Well, I'll give it a try." They brought over a small moss sample, some moss, like we all have in our yards. I was thinking about this the other day. One of the prettiest of the fairy gardens that I got a chance to look at when I was visiting in Richland, the Richland Florence Garden Club, had moss from all around this woman's yard. All the property had different pieces of it. And I thought about this story. I wasn't sure if I had told you all about it. So they brought it over there, and it had been about 8 inches beneath the soil, alongside some human remains that had been apparently reburied in a different location within a cemetery, okay? So this whole thing was to find out what had happened here, and when they got in touch with him about the moss, of course, what they wanted to know was where it came from, where it grew, and how long it had been buried there. So what did they do? They went out and did a field survey, Field Museum. But it's also a thing with a small f, too, because when you do a field survey, you look at the area, and then you look at increasingly larger circles around that area to see what you can find. And what they found was a huge colony of that particular species of moss growing in another place where they suspected those bones had been dug up. So that gave them the evidence that, in fact, the remains had come from this other section of the cemetery. This actually did go to court. And the tiny piece of moss helped expose the cemetery scandal in Illinois. There are, unfortunately, we hear about this from time to time, but we don't always hear about how it comes out. And the reselling of burial plots is an old scam. It's one that somebody tries every so often, and it's terrible. It's awful. And in this particular case, they were able to find out what happened, and when it went to trial in 2015, that moss told the tale. Now, come on, that's cool. You wanted to know that. You want to see the movie. Certainly more than just one episode. We need to know a whole lot more about Matt von Conradt, the study's lead author and the head of the botany collection at the Field Museum. Come on, this is great. It's just wonderful. Tiny, tiny clumps of moss can actually tell us things that we didn't know. And this was one that they did not know and needed to know so that they could find out what happened and start getting to the bottom of this scandal. I like it. Real powerful stuff. So when anybody comes to you, Lance, and says, "Let's go out and see about the moss," you might want to listen. I'm always fascinated by these things. Oh, I see that you have put up my happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Little fellow.
Love that guy.
We're gnomed out, I don't seem to be able to get away from them. I did not wear green because I didn't want to disappear and have only my head here. But if you are celebrating the wearing of the green, and I hope you are, remember that everybody's Irish this time of year. Just like everybody's Catholic for Mardi Gras. Everybody is at least a little bit Irish at this point. Yes, it's a perfect time to be learning about corned beef and cabbage and all those the other foods that you may or may not eat on a regular basis. I hope you do, but you may or may not. This is the perfect time to do that. When I lived on the West Coast, I was surprised to find a really interesting group of people whose entire world celebrated Irish food. And I have never been intrigued by Irish food since then, but I got to tell you, it'll get you through the famine because that's some heavy stuff. It's true. I'm not making that up.
Bunch of potatoes?
Lots, whenever they're available. Whenever they're available. Absolutely. But speaking of things you may or may not eat, you may or may not Like, how do you feel about chickpeas? I'm a big fan of hummus myself.
I love hummus, yeah.
There is actually out there, and I will tell you this is not a review from me because I only tried it once, but there are chickpea pastas. The chickpeas have been turned into other things, you know. I didn't like those, but I'm going to try another one because maybe I had one that was too big or too dense or something. But the University of Texas at Austin is going to be responsible for this forever. They have been growing chickpeas in simulated moon soil. Yes, that's 3 words you never thought you would hear together, but there they are. Simulated moon soil. All right. When we go to the moon, we dig up those samples, we bring them back to Earth. What is the first thing we do? We analyze them to see what's in that soil. So, since we are presumably in the long term thinking about, I don't know, maybe not you or me, Lance, but somebody's going to live on the moon one of these days, and they're going to have to grow something. So what they've been doing is they've been mixing that moonlight, the regolith from that, along with worm-produced compost, because we know worms will produce compost wherever they are, the moon or Mars or any place else, and some helpful fungi that we can also work into that actually helps these chickpeas grow. So what they want to do is, it's a soil that normally cannot support plant life, but now it can because of the amendments that they have produced to it, and that's, of course, what horticulture science is all about. Now, they got to figure out, and I don't know who's going to eat them, but they got to figure out if the crops are safe to eat. They'll test them. They don't have to eat them to do that. And then we'll know more about growing chickpeas on the moon. It could be that that's what gets us there. What do you think?
I don't know. That's pretty cool. You got to have food, right?
You got to have food. Oh, these are lovely. We had some beautiful pictures this morning. Looks like azaleas, and yeah, these are beautiful. Just lovely. Just lovely. Really pretty azaleas. The azaleas have been really pretty. I think this is I believe that is a Ladybank's rose, and of course some daffodils because it's that time. Y'all stick around. We'll be right back. Thank you, Mr. Stills. Appreciate that. Y'all, I'm going to rant here for a moment. Ellie in Florence has asked such a great question. And the people that work in her garden are not going to like this. And the people that work in your garden may not like this either. Here's what she says. My flower beds have a thick covering of leaves which falls over the pine straw mulch. Okay. My helper usually comes and removes the leaves and adds more pine straw. He's done this for several years. My question is, maybe it's time to remove the old pine straw and start fresh. It's a thick layer every year. Ellie, your instincts are absolutely right. Here's what happens. It looks neat when that new layer of pine straw gets put on top. You get blow the leaves off and neaten it up. But underneath, the pine straw is slowly but surely decomposing, and not necessarily in a good way. Here's why. We end up with more pine straw than the water that rains or that you apply can get through to the soil below. So the soil below may have, first of all, actually just still be a bit dry. Secondly, even if that doesn't happen, the thickness of the pine straw is crowding the roots of the plants that you've got in the bed. So if you got 4 inches of pine straw around plants that were already there and you add 2 more inches, that's going to begin to smother them after a time. When he rakes, or when you rake back that pine straw, you're going to see white mycelium running through that dark, almost blackened pine straw down at the bottom. That's what needs to be moved out. It creates a good walking path. I use it in other parts of the garden for that very purpose, because it's not going to decompose completely, but it is going to form a pretty seriously tight surface. So that's why, yes, every couple of years, every 3 years, even every 5 years, at some point, you need to rake out the old pine straw and start fresh. You're absolutely right, Ellie, and that's such a great question. It's something we don't necessarily talk about all the time, but it is necessary always to understand what's going on in your garden. And there are a lot of people, here's the rant part, it's a whole lot easier to go in there and just put on a fresh layer and spruce it up than it is to actually take the old pine straw out and figure out what to do with it and replace it with some fresh pine straw. It's a bigger process. So I think sometimes it may be a matter of how long you want to pay somebody to work in your garden, or it may be a matter of their process, and it's not necessary every year, but there is going to be a point where you have to pull that pine straw back and take a look at it. Is it necessary to replace pine straw every year? I really don't think it is. I would prefer to see you do it at least every second or third year. At least look at it every year, but it probably won't need to come out but about by the third year. Okay. Do you know what kind of tree this is? No, I don't. But I'm going to look at it a little closer. I'm not sure what the flower is because it's really blurry. But I'm going to look at that again and see if I can figure out what that is. Marcella, I'm sorry that I can't tell you right away, but I will get to it. Gosh, so many things going on this week. I'm just going to go ahead and put the word out there. I have bought my bubblegum petunias for this year. And yes, they're expensive, and I don't care. I love that particular petunia. It's one that will go and go and go. And the pink color it was Barbie pink before Barbie pink. Okay, it's a beautiful, beautiful flower, and it makes a beautiful basket. I'm going to have 2 of them this year, so I've already done that. I've also cut back the parsley, started fertilizing it again to get it. You want the parsley and any of the overwintering things, pansies and all these things, you want them to have that other shot at spring. So you need to neaten them up, do a little bit of grooming, put a little fertilizer out for them, whether they're flowers or overwintering vegetables. It's really time to do that. That does give them the opportunity to take advantage of the coming good weather. No, if it's going to be freezing Monday night, I'm not going to fertilize things out in the ground right away. But you need to keep it in your mind because things are going to change fast. It's going to go very, very quickly coming up. Another of the plants that sounded like a good idea at the time, you will see at supertalk.tv a sort of the structure of a house. It has been eaten by kudzu. And yes, that does in fact happen. We really did think that kudzu was going to solve a lot of problems, erosion control primarily among them. And it is a beautiful flower. And yes, we do know that there are some health benefits to be derived from parts of that plant. They haven't quite turned into an industry yet, which is probably something somebody needs to be doing about it. But at any rate, it is a plant that escaped on us. And no matter where you go across the South, but particularly Zone 8s and into Zone 9, you're going to see so much kudzu. You will see it frozen back in, for example, North Mississippi, but it's greens right up again. It's not something we can get rid of, and we're not going to. But don't plant it. If you have the opportunity, don't. It's lovely. It also will eat your house, as this has shown. I think the first time I ever saw something that had been enveloped by kudzu, it was a truck. And I didn't realize it was real. I thought it was a joke. It's a truck, but it's covered up in a plant. Not good, not good. It was out on the side of the road. I'm going to say near Brookhaven, but I can't really be sure of that. That was a kid. It was a long time ago. I've lived over Mississippi and Louisiana my whole life, and even into Alabama. So sometimes I see stuff, but I think I know where I saw it. Speaking of knowing where you saw it, coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about a ghost of a great white shark. We're going to talk about strange frog-like insects. These are words that don't seem to go together, and yet they do. And my friends, the hedgehogs, yeah, we got news about them too. So, on the subject of pine straw, I've been told thick pine straw keeps the weeds away. So, how thick should it be to keep the flower or garden beds healthy? It really does depend. If you have azaleas that are planted high, in other words, they're almost up out of the ground because you're trying to keep them from having wet feet, you can certainly put more pine straw up around them to cover their base. That's fine. Might be 3 inches, might be 4 inches. But if you're going much past that around anything, you're getting more pine straw than you are cover. I prefer to put, if I'm going to use pine straw, I would prefer to put down landscape fabric, plant through that, and then mulch with pine straw on top of that. That keeps it neat, keeps it pretty, and also, frankly, gives you a better look. On the other hand, if you have the opportunity, if you're going in with pine straw around things that are already existing, I'm going to always say 2 inches. And if you need more than that, I think you need to be pulling weeds more often. Is what I think. Oh, good. Marcella sent a slightly better picture, and I'll have a chance to look at that. I'll get up underneath there, stare into that flower. I don't know what that is, but I probably can figure it out. It just take me a little while. I don't think it's Grancy Graybeard. That's what she was hoping for. Talk about a beautiful tree. Oh, my goodness. I don't know if we all realize how lucky we are. Our native trees don't get near as much attention as they should. But at this time of the year, if you've got a nice space and you can plant things like native red bud and native Grancy graybeards and get some of those things going, you will always have a scene that is worth enjoying, that's also highly beautiful for photography, but it's also a pleasant place to be and something a little bit different. Earlier than crepe myrtles, better than evergreens in that sense. Why not? Think about flowering trees. I'm all for those. Well, you may think I'm crazy, but I'll be here for a while this morning. Appreciate you tuning into the Garden Mama Show. Come back with me. We got an hour to go. I wanted to say hello, send a shout out to the Harris Family Farm people at the Pontotoc Market this morning. Hope y'all are doing well. I love that they've got stuff, but the stuff to sell, but they've also got stuff you can pre-order. So that's a very cool way to do those things. Plant sales all over the place already starting up, as you might imagine, south to north. So there's Crosby Arboretum. I mean, just check it all out. Anywhere you think might have one, it's going to be there in the next few weeks. We'll get Peaches in here in a couple weeks to help us with our calendar because, there's a lot. There's a whole lot. I'm also going to tell you to don't forget, coming up on the 17th, it's Tuesday night at 6 p.m., Flower Growers of Mississippi. You can join us for another great session about how to grow cut flowers in Mississippi and actually in the South, commercially as well as for people that just want to know more about it. It's a good program. I'm happy to say I helped with it. You're looking at good old broken Bradford pear tree at SuperTalk.tv. This particular specimen comes from our friend Walter Reeves, the Georgia gardener, and it's a good one. It broke and snapped right off. Whew. What a mess. What a mess. Somebody had asked me this week, and I said I would look it up, and I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. Eden Brothers is, in fact, who has quite a few different celotias. People want to grow celotias for cut flowers and also for the garden. That's one of those things that's rather like zinnias. You can plant them monthly straight up through the summer, and as long as you get them in before, 6 weeks before frost, you're going to have more flowers. So give yourself that opportunity, get some celotias going. There are some colors that are different. There are some, for instance, one of the ones I was really intrigued by is the one that I call the brain, the tightly knit celotia. There's a beautiful pink one that's just different shade, different color that I hadn't seen before. So I hope you will enjoy that. Today's leaf-footed bug is the bug of the day. You will see that at supertalk.tv. It brings me up, I want to talk over the next couple of weeks about the differences in all of these bugs that have leaf in their name, because some are good and some are not. The leaf-footed bug can do some damage, but the azalea leaf bug can do even more. There's just bugs everywhere, so we have to talk about them from time to time. I don't really know. I don't even, there's so many questions. Today is Save a Spider Day. Somebody might want to know why we would do that. Well, of course we need to do that. Did you know that there are spiders that are so tiny you can't see them, and there's other ones that are, so big that they'll hurt you? You probably knew that, but you may not have thought about it recently. Might need to pay attention a little bit more to the spiders that are around you, simply because we have, frankly, got so many of them. We're not actually looking at the spider species in this world. I mean, you talk about something, you want a career that's going to go on forever? There are more than 50,000 identified species of spiders but science believes that there are that many more that we haven't really pinned down yet. And of course, sometimes it's a matter of going out into the wild and finding them. Other times it's a matter of going through collections to understand, now that we can look at things in different ways, we can look at the way that various plants have, various spiders have evolved, but there are different things that we can find out about them that we didn't necessarily already know. 139 families of them. They are 7th in total species diversity. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's among everything. Just amazing. The foot-long legs of the Goliath bird eater. It's a pretty good name for a spider if you think about it. But interestingly, to me, we always think about, people are afraid of spiders because they're afraid of venoms, and there's so many things that are disturbing about what could happen. It's actually only about 13 species that are known to go after humans. And so out of that many, the vast majority of them are not our problem. I really do hope that you understand that when we talk about spiders, we always talk about the different ones, but we don't necessarily appreciate what the differences actually are. We might know tarantulas, for example. We know that they live for years and years and years. Probably their most notable feature is their legs. They're fancy, okay? But we've also got jumping spiders, and we've got the orb weavers, the ones that make classic circular webs. But we've also got funnel webs. Those are good catchers. They catch their insects very effectively. And I have to say, I didn't know about wolf spiders. They are ground dwellers, and they run fast. So I like that. Any rate, interesting. I can't quite catch up with all of this, but I'm going to go on to Happy Pie Day. Can you identify this heirloom shrub? Well, no, I really can't. I have to stare a little harder. It's trying to look like either spirea or flowering almond, but I don't know for sure. Look up flowering almond and see if it looks like that. Okay? There's that pawpaw coming up at supertalk.tv. Ooh, that's a good question. Will landscape fabric prohibit the crown from developing around your with a perennial? No, it will not. It won't stop that. It will not stop that. Planting coreopsis and yarrow coneflowers and agapanthus. Nope, it'll actually give them it'll give them the space that they need to grow in, and not be crowded by the weeds that could come up. And of course, you'll always, at the end of each season, you'll want to go and look at where your landscape fabric is with regard to them, so that you're giving them enough room for other things to come up. But it's really not a problem. When you plant through the landscape fabric, generally speaking, you cut an X and then fold those under, so you've created a space for the plant. And then that in turn gives you the opportunity to go back and make it bigger or even smaller if you need to. What a great question. Well, good morning, Willie in Tupelo. Should I cover my native flowers, blackberries, and stuff that are coming up? They're going to be in the low 20s in Tupelo. Oh, my goodness. I got to say, if you've got anything that is young and that you feel like could be damaged, it's not going to hurt to cover them up. You just have to remember to uncover them. The bigger piece, of course, is making sure that nothing goes into a freezing night as a dry plant. So give yourself the opportunity to water. And then if you have something, you can throw some mulch over those. If they're young plants, yes, sure, go ahead, cover them up, because you don't want them to get set back. But they're going to be fine. It's just a matter of keeping them from being in any kind of trouble. It's a pleasure to hear from you. One of my very favorite folks in the world is Mr. Willie. I appreciate hearing from you, and his taste in music is outstanding too. So, SuperTalk.tv right now. You're looking in at the leaf-footed bug on. That just is what's turned out to be a lovely bug. I followed this bug around in the backyard for about 30 or 40 minutes the other day to see how many there were, and there were 2. I couldn't find any more. I'm sure that they have multiplied by now or have moved on to another part of the garden. But they do some damage, and you do have to keep up with what you've got. overpopulations are never a good thing. Never a good thing. So, but the leaf-footed bugs and I are getting along. I do really want you to know, though, that they're not all the same. This is one of the funniest things to me. When we name insects, we go through all this stuff, and people meet. You know, they do this for insects, they do this for plants, they do this any kind of species that has to get identified. These people argue for days and days and days, every year, probably years in some cases, about what the plant is and what it's related to. And now we have DNA, the opportunity, now we have the genomes. We can go in and actually see the differences. We have the ability to do electron microscopy that we didn't have before, and we're able to find out a lot of things. And yet, we still have, they are in the Hemipteran suborder, Heteroptera. They're sap-sucking insects. Yep, that's pretty much like all the rest of them. And I love this. It comes from the genus Coreus, which comes from ancient Greek, which means bug. All of this, and it still just is a bug. I love that. So much fun. Leaf-footed bugs can, in fact, they don't harm humans or animals, but they will. A large number of them can be damaging. They tend to be more of a pest in grain crop plantings, but they can be a problem. However, they can disfigure flowers, and even when they don't tear the plants up, and they do tear some other things up as well. And if you have too many of them, it's an overpopulation problem that you can see. So you will see them. They're easy to spot. The reason that they're called leaf-footed bugs is because their feet literally are flat. They have like duck feet. And so it's easy to see them. It's easy to spot them on your plants. Fascinating. Now, leafhoppers, on the other hand, I promise I won't get too deep into this today because it'll probably drive y'all crazy. But these are the true bugs. As opposed to the bugs, these are the true bugs, Hymenoptera. Okay? And in fact, leafhoppers are going to, they literally pierce and suck your plants. So again, it's a question of numbers. You have to know how many you have to know what they're eating, and you have to pay attention to them because they can get to be a big problem. Usually, they have overwintered somewhere in some debris, so that's one of the reasons why, even if you are a traditional lawn mowing person who likes to drop the cuttings back into you just mow and let the cuttings fall into the thatch, every so often you do have to clean that out. That's leafhoppers will get in there, and that makes a really perfect environment for them, which can cause you problems in other parts of your yard. It's easy enough to control them, though. They're easily deterred with things like pyrethrins. Not a problem. And of course, younger ones are easier to get rid of than the older ones. There's a classic. There's a whole thing about putting out things like coffee grounds and corn meals and various and sundry things as an insect repellent. Sometimes it works. If you have a whole lot of excess coffee that you want to use up, it won't hurt, and sometimes it's helpful. So, Ron's in Ocean Springs. Oh, you know this is true. Ron's having coffee this morning, and I appreciate you so much. Or you may be drinking tea, I don't know, but you clearly are wide awake. I wonder if spiders talk smack on who's the best hunter or who has the superior web design. You know they do. You know those orb weavers, come on, those funnel weavers. I mean, they're out there trying to one-up each other, absolutely. And come on now, they may give each other better names than we do, too. I'm always reminded of the the names that we give the dogs and the names the dogs give themselves. The Far Side. If you don't know that cartoon, look it up. It's really funny. But it's literally about the human beings have a tendency to do what is called anthropomorphize. That is to say, we put human qualities on things that are not human. And it could be spiders, it could be dogs, it could be any number of things. But in this particular case, I think that spiders probably do talk smack. They may even have competitions. If you're at supertalk.tv, and I hope you are, you will be seeing now our friend the tallow tree. And this was a picture I found of it, which kind of explains why we love and hate it all at once. These beautiful red leaves that are turning for the fall are spectacular. They go on to be one of the most dramatic red-purple trees that are in the environment in the southeast. Sadly, they also at that same time have their green berry-looking seed pods on them, which ripen to be the white popcorn that's why it's also called popcorn tree. So by the end of fall, sometimes you're seeing white popcorns on a purple leaf tree, and you think, well, that's the prettiest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, well, it can be. Unfortunately, every one of those seeds is going to turn into an invasive tree, and the tree itself is going to be an invasive tree, and it's going to be a problem. So don't hesitate to get rid of tallow trees, Chinese tallow trees, popcorn trees. And yes, you have my permission to, give our text line to your mama or whoever doesn't want you to cut it down, and we'll try and persuade. We will try and persuade. Can be tough, but we will definitely try. I have another leaf, the azalea lace bug. Everybody's got bug in here. Leaf-footed bugs and leaf hoppers and leaf bugs and lace bugs and all these things. These piercing and sucking insects, their job is to take the sap out of your plants, and that's not helpful. So a little bit of damage is not a problem, but for the most part, by the time we get a good infestation going, and these things do multiply every couple of weeks, but if not sooner, we end up with a bigger problem than we can handle in one season. So for example, if you go out and look at your azaleas, they're covered up in flowers, but all the leaves underneath have sort of a weird silvery looking mess on them, silvery looking sheen. You have a problem that you need to deal with. Right after the azaleas bloom, go ahead and prune them, get the prunings out of the garden, and give yourself the opportunity to get them what they need. It may be a neem spray regime, it may be something else, but the point is you need to control that problem or they're not going to be able to grow, and they're actually going to begin to die after a time. Ken in Jackson has a classic. This is a Chinese evergreen that he's been growing, and the bottom leaf is yellow. The bottom leaf is yellow because it's like sending up that caution sign when you pull up to the intersection, okay? It says, hey, all my nitrogen has gone to the top of the plant. And in the case of Chinese evergreens, you really don't need anything but a slow release pellet or occasionally put a little fertilizer in the water to keep that balance right. They don't grow fast, but they do grow. And when they grow, they take the nitrogen from the lower leaf and put it into the top of the plant so the top can start growing. So when it gets out of balance, you end up with a yellow leaf on the bottom. So take the yellow leaf off and fertilize the plant. You'll be fine. You will be just fine. It won't be a problem. What a great idea, though. It's a beautiful. I love Chinese evergreens. They're so pretty. They're called aglaonemas. They're one of the plants that is, I don't think we appreciate how long-lasting they can be in our indoor gardens or in the porch garden in the summertime. They're just a beautiful plant, one that's deep and green, and one that I like its shape. I have some philodendrons I was looking at yesterday. They all came from Gary. I've told you about this philodendron that grew in the sink in his office for a long time in the fluorescent light, and now it's grown everywhere. I've given it away, passed pieces around. But the good news is they're all growing, and that's wonderful. Little John Fred for you. Don't go far. We'll be back. Yes, indeed. Carole King, my friends. If you've never heard it, or even if you have, get in the Wayback Machine and pull up Tapestry, because it's a fantastic album. One of the best ones of its time or any time, really. I think sometimes there are people who wait and wait and wait. She wrote songs, she worked, she just absolutely cranked it out with those folks in the studios that wrote pop music and early rock and stuff. And when she finally came around to her own stuff, we really got a big change in our music appreciation, and she certainly was responsible for a lot of that. So if you haven't ever listened to the entire album, give yourself some time. It would be a good day for it. It would be a nice day to take a step back from the world and listen to Tapestry. Why not? Huh? Why not? Well, speaking of all of that, What a great text. You're so nice, Sparky. Thank you. Hey, guys, very much enjoy your show. When you're building a proper compost pile, and this is a very controversial question, very important, is it safe to use cotton gin, lint, cottonseed meal with the chemicals the farmers use in growing cotton? Will the chemicals stay in your finished compost and then therefore be traceable into the food or whatever you're growing? Here's the answer. It's hard to tell. One of the things about what's applied to the cotton is that it is a defoliant. So theoretically, those leaves are defoliated and pretty much gone by the time you would be harvesting the lint and the other pieces of that cotton. Now, there are compost makers who will test for those residuals, and they will tell you that in their process. So that's certainly one place to start. Understand which chemical has been used and what its potential damage could be, or what its potential not problem at all could be, because some things do in fact dissolve rather quickly. They degrade quickly, I should say. So my answer would be, if you're using fresh stuff, I'm going to be worried about it. I'm going to set it to the side and let it compost for a long time before I put it in with the compost that I'm going to use. And at the same time, if you can get information from the cotton gin about which defoliant was used and whether or not it is accepted, whether or not they have done any testing to know whether it is accepted into the plant or whether it just stays in the leaf, those would both be good things to know. But it's one of those things that you can't really tell about. Part of the reason why we talk about any of those sorts of things, whether it's sawdust or stuff from a cotton gin, we want it to compost for a year because it needs to go through its own heat. And in some cases, that is enough to actually reduce or eliminate the chances of any other kind of corruption from the chemicals that were used on it. The best, of course, is to be able to test it, and that's very difficult to do. SuperTalk.tv, you're going to see that picture of the Greenwood Cemetery that I talked about that I thought was so beautiful. And it's a good one. You can see the state capitol behind it. It's a gorgeous shot, and one that should be in everybody's house. That should be everybody. Joy and McGee has got Asian, I guess this is, I'm going to say, ladybugs in the house. Vacuum cleaners are really the best, sweeping them out. There's no need to spray because there'll just be more of them. And then after you do that, of course, you have to figure out where they're coming in from. It might be a tiny space. If you look under your sink, for example, there might be just the tiniest of spaces where they could get through. There may be bigger places that they could get through, but give yourself a chance to look for those entry points and do something about them. But yeah, you can vacuum them up. Take them, drop them in the neighbor's yard. Did I say that? Oh, I didn't say that. Vicky's in Columbia. That's two from Columbia today. Hey, y'all. Tell everybody, hey, that's a great town. I have 2 persimmon trees, had them for 4 years, and they're not producing any fruit. The second year, I got 6 persimmons total. And then there's another question. Okay, 2 persimmon trees. Persimmons can take 5 to 7 years to really get into production. If the trees are looking healthy and you have fertilized them, if you hadn't fertilized them, you can certainly go ahead and do that now. They are relatively heavy feeders. They don't like wet feet, but they do need water on a regular basis. So those are the 3 big things I know about them. If they are native persimmons, they'll be easier to get into production than if they are fancy ones, and that's not unexpected. But they both need to have a little bit of fertilizer to get them going if they're young trees, and they also will need maybe a little bit of pruning to shape them up, but that's a different issue, really. In the case of this, 6 persimmons total off 2 trees that were very young is pretty good. It tells you that they're capable of producing fruit. So that's good. Need help with plums, kumquat, and peaches. Those are very different. Kumquats, of course, are the citrus fruit that can be grown the farthest north. It has the greatest cold tolerance, usually 8B, sometimes up into 8A if it's a protected environment, just depends. There are sweet ones and there are tart ones, but they are another plant that will need to be maintained as an ongoing plant. You've got to fertilize them every year to keep them growing and keep them producing, particularly because they may get set back a little bit with cold weather. Plums and peaches are the hardest of this group. If you want to grow peaches, you're going to have to get into a regular spray program, and you will probably need, I don't know, people will tell you 6 to 8 trees. 6 to 8 trees will help with that, okay? Plums, on the other hand, are a little bit easier. You just have to be sure you get a pollinator. So if you're planting Santa Rosa, you want to plant Methley. You can get, but you'll need 2 plums to really get plums. Not that they will produce a few, but they're like persimmons. They produce a whole lot more if there's more than one of them. Who's on the phone, Lance?
We have Fletcher, and he has a question about banana trees.
Hey, Fletcher, what's going on today?
Hey, Garden Mama. I'm thinking about, I love banana trees where they look in yards.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, if I purchase one and plant one out about an acre from my home, half an acre, will deer eat them? And also, can you grow banana trees in this area?
Where are you?
Grenada.
Grenada.
Mississippi.
It's going to be tough because you have colder temperatures. What is your high going to be? 40 Monday? And that's about the lowest that a banana tree would like to survive. Now, after they're established, they will come up every year, but they won't grow enough to get to the point of making bananas. There's just not enough time.
No, I'm not interested in the fruit.
Yeah,
Not interested in the fruit.
But you will get beautiful, tall, healthy, happy leaves every year. No problem.
But will the deer eat them? Is it a good idea to plant them?
I've never heard that deer would eat them, but, I'm never going to tell you the deer won't, because I think that a hungry, thirsty deer is going to look for what's around, but
Sure.
I've never heard, no one's ever told me, and I've not seen them on a list of things to avoid if you have deer. So now we'll get 10 texts from people with their experiences, and I'll be happy to pass that along to you, too. But what a beautiful plant. You're absolutely right.
If I purchase one, do they have a tendency to spread over a couple of years?
Over a couple of years, that clump will get bigger. And, for example, if it's a 1-gallon pot, for example, you'll have about a 3-gallon size in a couple of years. They go pretty quickly.
Okay, great. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, sure. Thanks for calling, Fletcher. I look forward to seeing pictures of that banana one of these days. Other things that we enjoy for that kind of tropical texture can be aralias, fatsias, that sort of stuff. Those are lovely, and they'll do a good job for you. Isn't that pretty? You got some nice pictures today, Lance. Thank you.
Oh, they're good stuff, yeah.
Appreciate that. Probably not. I'm looking at these different things. Oh, my goodness. I've got some advice, and it comes to us from Kobe University. Things are not always what they seem. Sometimes things are more complicated, and we have to just look a little bit deeper into the situation to realize what's actually going on. I love this. Japanese red elder plants and heterohelous beetles. This is a communication form that you had to know existed, but we just don't see it that often. The beetles pollinate the flowers, okay? It's important. But they also lay their eggs inside the developing fruit. Now, we know this happens. We see this in plum curculios, for example. That worm will be inside the fruit if we don't deal with the situation. But this particular plant, the Japanese red elder, drops the fruit because they're not going to make good fruit, but the larvae survive, and that's how they propagate their species. So the Japanese red elder, gets pollinated by the same bug that destroys its fruit, or thins it at least, because by the time they drops all those fruit, the fruit remaining on the tree then have the opportunity to ripen. So it's a partnership that we may or may not have encountered before, and one that is called nursery pollination mutualism, because both the tree and the insect are getting what they need from the situation. The interactions are fascinating because they sit on the boundary of cooperation and conflict. You can see if it goes too far one direction, there's no more fruit from the tree. On the other hand, if there's no more fruit from the tree, there's no more place for the larvae to develop, so the insect gets compromised too. Pretty interesting stuff. This is a great question from the Delta. Thank you for this one. Is there anything I can do before planting squash to help with the squash vine borers? The main thing that you can do is to be sure you're spacing those squash plants far enough apart that you can go look at them and be sure you're not seeing the egg clusters, because it's the egg clusters you're going to look for. The egg clusters of squash vine borers appear on the vine stems, but they will be tricky. They'll be right underneath the edge of that leaf, and if you look at the plant, you wouldn't see them. You got to pick the leaves up and look at the stems. They look like little amber clusters of tiny little eggs, and that's what they are. That's what you need to scrape off. So some people will do that physically. Some people will also do preventative insect sprays onto the squash, something like pyrethrin, if they know they've had that problem, just to keep those eggs from hatching. I think it's better to physically remove them, but I recognize that sometimes if you have a lot of squash, for example, it may be helpful to do that. Okay? Okay. Who have you got for me, Lance?
We have Jesse and Raymond, and he had a question about flowering tobacco.
Oh, hey, Jesse.
Number one, is it pronounced Nicotiana? I don't think I've ever heard it pronounced.
Yeah, it's Nicotiana, yeah.
Okay, good. Anyway, I started them maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. That seed is like dust.
It is,
At any rate, it's coming up in pretty well. Some of them even have second leaves. So where do I go from here? I mean, how big do they need to be before I transplant them? And I'm growing a variety called Starlight Dancer, which is white.
Yeah.
And do the blossoms stay open at night?
Yeah, they open at night and they smell at night too. Nicotiana alata, which is what he's talking about, this is flowering tobacco. If you have grown the little Nickies, they're about 2 feet tall and they have pretty flowers on them. This is a much taller plant. It's the mother of those other ones. But you don't grow it for the tobacco leaves, we grow it for the flowers. And yes, it blooms at night. My children will tell you that among the plants that I woke them up in the night to go out to smell blooming, there was Nicotiana alata. This year, I'm growing one that has pale green flowers, and it is my weird plant that I'm growing this year because I can't help it. I got to grow it. I'm hoping it's going to smell as good as the other one did. I would let them have 2 sets of leaves because this is a very, as you say, the seed are like powder. You know, there's really...
Okay, yeah.
You know, but I would let them have a couple of good sets of leaves, and you may actually have to, if they're crowded, because sometimes they come up really tightly, and if they are, then we will need to separate them a little bit and let them strengthen up before you try to transplant. Well, what a wonderful plant,
right?
Yeah, if you deadhead them, they do a little better. But they're just, I love that plant. It's one that we don't see enough because it's not. My grandmother used to have it behind the hydrangeas. You know, in other words, it's not a fancy front of the bed plant, but for tight and for flowers and for a great smell, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Thanks so much. And by the way, I'm still vacillating on the tube roses. I think I'm just going to put them out in April and see what happens. You know,
I hope so.
Nobody seems to have a firm opinion.
My friends in the Delta grow them, and they all have different opinions.
Thanks so much. Have a
sure.
great day.
Thanks, Jesse. Have a good one. If y'all have opinions about tuberoses, Jesse and I are both interested in that too. So let us know. All right. Talking about the vine borers, that's a good one. All right, we got that. Okay, super. Y'all are great. These are great questions today. Y'all have got so much to say, so many things to talk about. I have, today is potato chip day. Are you having potato chips for lunch, Lance? I think I might.
No, I doubt it. I do like a good bag of chips, so.
I've kind of fallen into that world. And yeah, I like baked ones. I know, it's terrible. People say, oh, what do you do? Well, they're good. That's, we can argue about that. Somebody asked me the last time you played this, what is that and why do I think I've heard it before? Well, you think you've heard it before because it's old, and it's a band called It's a Beautiful Day. So, enjoy. Ain't it the truth? My goodness. Tell you what, if I could write just one song as good as that. Joni Mitchell, of course, has a whole catalog, and it's another thing I encourage you. Yes, she sounded like a little girl. She was a little girl. She was like 19 when she wrote that, but her voice has matured. Her point of view, however, has remained very strong and very serious, and she has a lot to say. So she's one of those people you ought to know about if you don't. And if you do, share her with somebody else. Who knew? If you were on a boat in the Mediterranean, spending your vacation, come on now, Lance and I have dreams. We want to get out there. But in 2023, in April, just a couple of years ago, this is barely any time at all in the history of a sea like the Mediterranean, local fishermen caught a juvenile great white shark, considered not to be there, but of course, when you find one, then you have to reevaluate the situation. This thing was like more than 6 feet long and weighed a good chunk because it was so big. But it's very, very uncommon. And the question began, well, wait a minute, but how, what? So they started looking, was this a ghost? Did we just have one? How could there just be one? Well, there isn't just one. And what they have found, of course, is that the historical records tell us, going back to 1862, people have been trying to document these things, comprehensive analysis looking at this, it really suggests that because they've been sighted and they're there and then they're not and then they are, it's been suggested that they are still in the Mediterranean. Great white sharks. Things we don't know until we look. The things we just don't know. They continue to inhabit the region. I would be kind of surprised myself if I found that. But anyway, just an interesting little bit of science going on out there in the world for you. Here's one of those things that we were taught. It turned out not to be true. I can remember having to learn how to spell Atacama, which is the desert between the Pacific Ocean and the Andes Mountains. It is, I don't even know, how big is it? 40,000 square miles. It's not huge, but it is, the question always was, what can possibly live there? There's an effect that sets up that this is considered the driest place on Earth, and we were certainly taught that nothing could live there because of the mountains effect and the ocean's effect, and the two things just wiped out the potential for life. How silly was that? We thought that was true, but that's because we couldn't see it. And we humans are so centered on what we can see and what we can feel and what we can do that we don't always catch everything. In this particular case, the nematodes, yes, our same friends that cause root knot nematodes in our tomatoes, that same family of creatures, they found that the biodiversity increases, of course, with moisture, and that altitude shapes what survives. And in this case, the nematodes have the largest group. It's possibly, they're far richer and much more fragile than anybody really believed, or than they could have noted. This is University of Cologne. I'm guessing that there are people that had to go find something to do, and they needed to go to somewhere warm, so they went to Chile. How about that? Tiny soil-dwelling nematodes are thriving with surprising diversity. Who knew? We didn't know. It's because they're microscopic. And in fact, we need somebody to study nematodes more, because nematodes are an issue for things like tomatoes, but also a lot of other plants and crops that we would like to grow around the world, and we would like to know more about them. So this will certainly give us an opportunity to study more and maybe even learn something we didn't know before. Genetic sleuthing again, my friends. Yep, that's right. Borneo. You want to go to Borneo? Well, you can go study fanged frogs. That's right, frogs with fangs. Yeah, how is that possible? Well, Michigan State University is the place to go. DNA is revealing that many animals that we thought were that one thing are actually a bunch of different things, which is how we end up with twice as many spider species, potentially, as we actually know about. That's how these things work. The Bornean fanged frogs are again blurring the lines between species, and we get into that question about how do they reproduce and how do they distinguish themselves, and that's all part of that same position of trying to understand these things, trying to see what's going on, trying to figure it out. And sometimes we can't figure it out, but sometimes they're able to, and they find out that there's a whole bunch more species than there were. I just have a couple of things to say to you. I know that this is a very challenging time in our world. It's going to get cold, it's going to get warm, it's going to freeze, it's going to not. The high is 40. The next, a week later, the high will be 70. Things are changing. Things are changing all around us and in many, many ways. So I'm going to just suggest my same point of view. My point of view has not changed. If you want to grow something you like to eat in addition to whatever flowers you like, or lawn, or trees, or trees and shrubs, because then you understand more about what our farmers face every single day. And you also get a little bit more in touch with your own environment. It's important to do that. And as I'm watching the price of vegetables go up in my local markets, you probably are too. You're going to want to know that you got a tomato or whatever it is that's your favorite thing. Might be that squash that's growing there in Columbia. We've got lots of people growing lots of things. If you grow a little something to eat, you're going to learn something. You're going to enjoy it, and quite frankly, it'll be delicious too, because that's just how that works. You grow it yourself. You've got an investment in it, and you also know what's in it, so you can do that. We talk a lot around here about the things that the lengths we're willing to go to for things. I'm willing to go to a lot of lengths to get a good tomato, but I don't even know if I can do this. The scientists at the University of Oxford are telling us that hedgehogs, which are, by the way, seriously vulnerable to cars because they go across the road and they don't go as fast as the cars, and the cars can't see them, and bang, it's a dead hedgehog. They can hear ultrasound. So if we can put up ultrasound detectors that tell them when the cars are coming, we might be able to save them. That seems a little bit crazy, but if I could set up an ultrasound that would tell me when the aphids are coming after my tomatoes, well, now that might be something. That might be something. Oh, very nice. Amanda from Pike County. Add to the window boxes on the garden shed, morning sun, afternoon shade. Really, that's just perfect for everything. I'm going to say narrow leaf zinnias. I'm going to say some of that celosia that I've been talking about with you. Even something like Dusty Miller, and you've got some beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful shed, and I think you could plant just about anything in there. You could plant trailing tomatoes. A lot of things, a lot of good choices. Really pretty, Amanda. Thank you. Just lovely. Really, really fun. That's great. I do think that I think I would put narrow leaf zinnias and then something else, just because there'll be so many flowers. You should let me send you some seeds. mamaaonair@yahoo.com, and I will send out some seeds in the next couple of weeks. Really pretty, though. Afternoon shade is so important. I was having this conversation with someone this week about when it says full sun, we kind of, in this world, we think that means Ohio. Because we recognize that full sun here is pretty tough on most plants when it goes on all day long. So give yours a little bit more, give yours a little bit of grace. Give yourself some morning sun, some afternoon shade. We'll see you next week.